Bridgette's drive to the Jennings house begins in a register of protective anger, the entirely understandable fury of a mother whose child has been tormented, and it would have been easy for the story to remain in that register throughout, casting Shyla simply as a villain to be confronted and defeated. But what makes this scene worth real attention is the way it complicates that initial framing almost immediately, because the moment Shyla answers the door, Bridgette's private observation, wondering whether this girl has spent her whole life being excused for cruelty because of her beauty, already signals an unusual level of perceptiveness, a willingness to look past the surface behavior toward the structure that might have produced it, and this instinct, to ask not just what someone did, but why, is precisely the instinct that will carry the rest of the scene toward something more valuable than a simple confrontation. When Bridgette states her purpose plainly, refusing to be deflected by the no-soliciting sign or Shyla's practiced bravado, and Shyla's demeanor shifts instantly upon learning who she's speaking to, this small moment of visible fear beneath the performance of toughness offers the first real crack in Shyla's armor, and Bridgette's response to that crack, rather than pressing her advantage or savoring the upper hand, is to remain focused on the actual point. That the bullying must stop, which establishes her from the outset as someone motivated by protection rather than punishment for its own sake. What follows on the patio is a conversation that could easily have gone through the motions of a stock apology and resolution scene, but instead becomes something considerably more honest, because when Bridgette accuses Shyla of manufacturing tears, and Shyla's response reveals genuine and unguarded pain, the admission that her so-called entourage consists of people who aren't really her friends, that she lacks the basic parental love every child deserves, the scene pivots from confrontation into something closer to diagnosis, and Bridgette's visible recoil at this revelation, her private recognition that she is looking at a neglected girl rather than simply a cruel one, models an important and often underappreciated skill, the ability to hold someone accountable for harmful behavior while simultaneously registering the conditions that produced it, refusing to let either truth cancel out the other. The conversation's turn toward Jill's sexuality deserves careful reading, because Shyla's blunt, almost accusatory question about whether Bridgette knew her daughter was gay could have been deployed as a weapon, an attempt to shock or destabilize a mother she assumes will be uncomfortable with the subject. But Bridgette's calm, unbothered response, gently correcting Shyla's word choice while affirming without hesitation that she has always known and accepted this part of her daughter, immediately reframes the entire exchange, because Bridgette refuses to be rattled by a revelation she has clearly already made peace with long ago. And this steadiness does something important for Shyla, whether or not she recognizes it in the moment, modeling what it looks like for a parent to receive a child's identity with warmth rather than crisis. This is where Bridgette's own disclosure of her bisexuality becomes so significant within the scene's larger emotional architecture, because she is not simply offering personal information to build rapport, she is quietly demonstrating to a teenager clearly hungry for any evidence that a difficult, non-normative interior life can still lead somewhere stable and loved, that queerness is not a phase or a crisis but something a person can carry forward into an entire life. A marriage, a family, a settled sense of self, and Bridgette's easy, unashamed honesty about having loved a woman for 5 years before meeting her husband offers Shyla, and any young queer viewer watching this scene, a model of integration rather than either closeted suppression or dramatic rupture, the sense that same-sex attraction can simply be one true fact among many in a full and ordinary life, rather than the defining crisis around which everything else must reorganize. Shyla's genuinely curious, almost childlike question about whether being gay might be genetic reveals something important about where she actually is developmentally and emotionally. A teenager encountering these ideas without much prior scaffolding, working things out in real time, hungry for information nobody else in her life has apparently been willing to give her. And Bridgette's gentle, unhurried answer, admitting she doesn't know but taking the question seriously rather than dismissing it, continues to model the kind of patient, non-judgmental adult presence Shyla has clearly been missing. When the conversation turns to what actually happened between Shyla and Jill, Bridgette's questions remain notably fair rather than accusatory, and Shyla's account, the flirtation, the kiss, the sudden coldness that followed, deserves to be received with the complexity the story allows it, because a teenager experiencing her first same-sex attraction and then facing what felt like rejection or humiliation afterward would have every reason to be in genuine pain, even if that pain does not excuse the bullying that followed, and Bridgette holds both truths simultaneously, expressing real doubt about Shyla's version of why the friendship ended, while still taking seriously the underlying wound Shyla is describing, and Shyla's own devastating insight into her own behavior, recognizing that she pursues negative attention because it mirrors the only kind of attention she receives from her mother, is a remarkably self-aware admission for a teenager to make, and it is precisely this admission that transforms the scene from a story about punishing a bully into a story about understanding one. Bridgette's response to this vulnerability, her simple, warm, "Oh, honey," followed by her offer of real, concrete help, connecting Shyla with her own therapist, offering to cover the cost, doing so with full respect for the fact that Shyla's mother would need to approve, represents the scene's true emotional climax. Because this is not performative kindness or a naive attempt to fix everything with a single gesture. It is a specific, actionable offer of the exact kind of support a neglected child actually needs, professional care that exists independent of Bridgette's own life and schedule, something sustainable rather than a one-time act of comfort that will evaporate once Bridgette drives home. What makes this ending genuinely valuable rather than merely tidy is its refusal to resolve Shyla's loneliness through the relationship with Bridgette herself, choosing instead to redirect that need toward appropriate professional support. And this choice reflects a crucial distinction that stories about mentorship and care between women, queer and otherwise, so often get wrong. The difference between an adult offering genuine warmth and connection in the moment versus that adult becoming the actual, ongoing solution to a young person's deep and unmet needs. Because Bridgette, whatever compassion she feels for Shyla, correctly recognizes that she is not equipped, nor is it appropriate for her to become Shyla's substitute parent or primary source of emotional repair. And pointing her instead toward a therapist honors both the seriousness of what Shyla needs and the appropriate boundary of what an adult in Bridgette's position can actually and safely provide. This restraint carries real significance for queer audiences specifically, because it depicts an older queer woman recognizing a younger person's vulnerability and responding not by allowing that vulnerability to reshape her own boundaries, but by using her position, her resources, her steadiness, to connect the younger person with support that can actually help her long after this single conversation ends. And this is a meaningful contrast to narratives elsewhere that conflate emotional generosity with the erosion of appropriate boundaries, because here generosity and boundary-keeping work together rather than against each other. Bridgette able to say honestly that she likes Shyla, that she believes people can grow, that friendship between everyone involved might eventually be possible, while still directing Shyla's most urgent needs toward the professional care actually suited to meet them. The scene closes then, not on romantic tension, but on the quieter, more sustainable note of a young woman being offered something she has clearly never had. An adult who saw the real reason behind her cruelty, who did not simply punish or dismiss her, and who took her pain seriously enough to connect her with real, lasting help. And this ending honors what the story was actually building toward all along. Not the transformation of a bully into a romantic interest, but the transformation of a neglected, lonely teenager into someone who might, with the right support finally offered to her, learn to seek love in ways that don't require hurting the people around her to get it.